Aloha, Richard Halverson here. This is ITS387P. It's February 17th, spring semester. And so let's see, let me share my screen. All right, so we are in this 2-week period. And so today I'm going to cover chapter 5. I'm not going to cover it very densely, but you folks are like way ahead of me anyway and are pretty much up to speed and all this stuff. So if we look at the chapter here, we actually covered 1, 2, 3, and 4 last time, and so today I'm going to continue on. I might get all the way through. I'm not sure. Probably not. I'll probably talk a little bit about this next time. But I noticed that 77% of the participation and 77% of the challenges are all done. So you guys are moving right along. Very good. So let's see. We finished chapter 4, or section 4, which talked about truthy and falsy, which is, I don't use that. So loops. And so I'm going to assume you're all familiar with another programming language, like you're either familiar with Python or you're familiar with C#. Okay, so I can talk about these constructs relative to those 2 languages. Okay, every language has a while loop, and while some condition is true, it does this body. And again, with Python, as with C#, you enclose the body in these curly braces, and in Python, it is the indentation of the code within the body that defines it as being within the body. So you don't use these curly braces. But it's the same idea. While the condition is true, execute the body, and then you come back up again, you test the condition again, and if the condition again tests true, then you execute the body again. And so you have to have something in the body that's going to eventually make the condition be false. Otherwise, it's going to keep on running forever. Okay. And so that's what this is about. And this stresses the point that it's you execute the loop, you come back up here and test, and then if it's false, then you bounce down to here. And this little exercise points out that even though you're going up to equal to 4, you see I ends up being all the way up to 5 before it terminates, because I had to be 5 before this would be false. All right, so anyway, and then of course with while loops, you get the cases where there's a bug in the program and the terminating condition never ends up being false. That this condition never evaluates to false, and the thing just goes on forever. And eventually the browser or the runtime machine or whatever is executing this hopefully can detect that and cause it to stop. But that function would be underneath and not in control of the programmer until we do exceptions, which I think we actually do cover exceptions in this chapter. Exception handling, yeah. Okay, anyway, back to where we were. Okay, so that's while loops. Okay, and then there's this thing called a do while, And I think C# has this. Python does not have this. It's where it's going to execute the body of the loop at least once, and then it tests a condition at the end. Okay, and in this case, it's you do the body while the condition is true. So again, and if the condition is true, you go back and you do the body again. So you loop, you keep on going, and of course there should be something inside the body which will eventually cause this condition to evaluate to be false, and then it'll be able to continue on. So this is do while. So you can practice there, get some points. For loop, of course, a for loop is same in all languages. You've got some sort of initialization going on, usually it's a variable that increments, and you have a terminating condition, and then you have this thing that is executed. It's executed each time the loop executes. So it starts out with I equaling 1, and then this executes, and then you come back and this increments, and then you test if this is true or not. I think that's what it is. Let's see what it does. So first it sets I equal to 1, and then it tests that, executes that, and then it increments, and then it tests. Okay. Okay. So it increments, then it tests, and then it could, and then if this is it's like a while. So if this is no longer true, then it terminates. All right, so that's for loops. Okay, and we have break and continue in JavaScript, and in other languages, Python break. It's also called break and continue. Yes. And so this is a write a while loop that adds 2 to entered num. While entered num, this is entered num. While entered num is less than 10, displaying the result after each addition. Okay, so anyway, you can do that. That's pretty easy. Okay, functions. This is part of loops. Okay. Anyway, so a function, well, you know what functions are. There's functions in you define methods, declare methods, def in Python, and in C#, same thing, methods. And so a function is, where you group up a bunch of statements, it does something, and there's parameters coming in, and it can calculate something, figure something else, and return. It can print inside, just like any other code. All right. Declaring and calling functions. You call functions by their name. Okay, functions can return a value here. In this function here, the function's name is find average. And so you can see it has 2 numbers coming in. It figures out the average of those 2 numbers, and then it returns it. And by returning it, it means it makes the place where it was called actually evaluate to that value. So if this evaluates to 6.5, then okay, so this thing this calls the function, and when the function's done, this value is the average. It's the 6.5. It's what was returned. Okay, right? Yeah, yeah, you know that. Okay. Using a function expression before assignment. Okay, not too much to say about that. Okay, this is the arrow function, and we have arrow functions in C#. I don't think we have them in Python, but it's just a different way of defining a function. It's a nice compact way of defining these really small functions. So you have a function called find sum, and it has two parameters, and the result of find sum will return whatever this expression is. I mean, the a plus b, you see. So find sum, you call find sum, and these are the two parameters, and so it calculates to 3 plus 6 is 9. So that's what this ends up equaling. So that assigns it to that value. So sum is equal to 9, and when it prints 9. See, here's another one called square, and it just takes one parameter, and what it does is it takes that parameter and multiplies it by itself, and that's what the value ends up being. See, so those are arrow functions. Okay, we have scope. Okay, and so scope is there's two ways here that we can use to declare variables. We can use the var keyword, or we can use the let keyword. So we can say var x equals 6, or we can say let x equals 6. Okay, and the difference is the scope of the variables, the scope of x. So when you use var, let's see. Okay, let's go down inside here. Okay, so here we have a function. We have a function here, ends right here, and inside this function, we declare a variable called y, and we're using var to declare the variable called y. And we also declare a variable called z, and we're using var to do it. And so inside this, and these declarations are inside these if blocks. They're inside these curly braces, which define the block of code which executes only when this condition is true. Okay, so well, you know, as far as the var is concerned, it doesn't matter if it's declared inside here, it's declared out there. The fact of the matter is, when we get down to here, or we get down to here, as far as we're concerned, there exists a y because it was declared in here, and there exists a z because it was declared in here. So when this thing comes down and blah, 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 and executes, these have values. The y and the z have values that these can see, that can be seen out here. Okay. Now, if we use let, we're using let inside here. We're using let inside here. That let only defines, allows the variable y to be seen or to exist inside the block that it was defined. Well, the block that it was defined is this if block. So when you say let y equals something, and then you print it out, that's fine, you print it out. Once you go outside this if block, y does not exist anymore. Okay. Then you go down here and you just x, and this z is defined inside here, so it exists. You can print it out, and then you come back outside of this if block, and z does not exist anymore. So you come down to here, console.log, and you want to print out y, and you want to print out z. Well, they don't exist. Okay, can't see it because they're gone. They've disappeared. They Y disappeared when this curly brace right there was encountered, and Z disappeared when this curly brace right here was encountered. Okay, so anyway, that's the difference between var and let. So you got to remember that. And by the way, it says here that is back in the olden days, you only used var, and then but let came along in 2015. Yeah, okay, well, not, I've been writing JavaScript since 1996 or so, and so this was brand new to me. I had never seen this until I started teaching this, until I started using this textbook, to be honest with you. But I can see its usefulness. All right, arrays. Arrays are called lists in Python. I think they're called arrays in C#. But anyway, an array has elements, and there's an index. You know, the elements have indexes. So there's a first one, there's a second one, there's a third one, and so on. So there's an order. They can repeat and so on. They're not like sets, and they're expressed the same way. You use these curly braces, and you can you define an array like this, and then you can there's an index, so you can set the 0th element to be something and the first element to be something, so on. You do that, print them out, and it all works. Here's another way of defining an array. You can just define it with the actual elements themselves. They don't need to be integers or anything. They're just these are just strings and so on. So these are arrays. You go through this, and you reference them like this and so on. All right, adding and removing array elements, similar methods that come along with like either language, any of the other languages. Let's say you have a array that looks like this, and you want to push a value onto it. Well, it pushes it onto the end, okay? And let's say you want to pop something, it pops off the end. So if you say pop, it's going to pop off the end one, and then there's shift and unshift. Shift or unshift adds the value, as does push, but unshift will push it onto the front, and shift will pop it off the front, will pull it off the front. See, pulls the 2 off. Okay, so if you wanted to make a stack, you would, I guess you would use shift and unshift. Yeah, you'd use shift and unshift. If you want to make a queue, you'd use push and shift. Push would add something onto the back, and shift would pop something off the front, pull something off. Okay, and then there's a splice, which is complicated. You have a starting index, and then the next is a bunch of elements to insert, and deletes 2 elements, items to delete and items to add. Okay, so this would be starting index of, that's interesting. So how does it know? It adds this. Oh, this is the number of elements to delete, and then this is a bunch more elements to add. Okay. So that's why this is one integer, and this is one integer, and then this is as many elements as there are, as many as you would add. All right, so example here, looping through an array. Same thing as you can loop by index, and then this is where it's like the, in Python you name an element that comes from a list. I mean an array. This is the element that is pulled off the array, starting with the first element. Okay. And there's a method that goes along with arrays, which is this for each method that goes along with arrays. And you can I guess you use item and index. I guess in this example here, we put a function, and then, well, anyway, I don't use this very much. All right. Okay, so anyway, you can go through those. Okay, passing arrays to functions. So this is an array, and looks like you can pass the array to a function. All right, so passing arrays to functions. Searching an array. So you have these methods, index, index of, and last index of, where you want to search for the index of a value, where a particular argument is. What's the index of a particular argument, and -1 if it's not in there. And so index of will give you the first one, and last index will start searching from the back. It'll start searching from the back and come forward. So that's you do that. Sorting an array, there's a sort method which comes along with the part of an array, and I'm pretty sure it's smart enough to decide what sort algorithm to use depending on how sparse the array is and so on. Okay, maybe I will finish this chapter. It's only 2:55. All right, objects. You know about objects. They're like classes. It's a collection. An object is an unordered. Well, it's the instance of a class. They're defined the same way, but they're not called classes in JavaScript. Classes versus objects. JavaScript does not have classes, and functions are actually objects. And yeah, I know. By difference, the only difference is that function objects is that they are callable. Okay, so anyway. That's so you have these objects, and it's an unordered collection of properties and also methods. So a property is a name value pair, and so here let's see, here's a book. Book is a, this is an object. This object and properties. Accessing object properties. Methods. Okay. An object property may be assigned an anonymous function to create a method. Okay, that's how it works. Methods may access the object's properties using the keyword this. So that looks familiar. Followed by a period before the property name. So it's this some properties. So okay, so you can have a, you can have this object here, and you got these properties here, and you got some methods in here too, and these methods are able to access this is a property, this is a first name. You want to access this, which means this this object, and it's the author property of this object, and it's the first name property of the author. Okay, so that's what this is. Isn't that interesting? So this is how you might invoke this method. All right. Here's some more practice doing that, and you have these accessor properties and getter, accessors and getters to just, if you want to, protect accessing of the properties, much like C# and Python. So there's that. Passing objects to functions. You can pass objects to functions. I think you can in most other languages. Not. There's subtle differences. All right, maps. Okay, in JavaScript they're called maps. In associated in so they're like dictionaries. Okay, so JavaScript maps versus Python dictionary. Yeah. Okay. All right. So anyway, so it's associative arrays, data structure maps, keys to values. A key value pair is called an element. In JavaScript, objects can be used as maps. So that means you can map keys to objects, I suppose. Object maps. So we have a key and then an object. We have a key and then an object. That's pretty cool. All right. Okay, so you can, these are methods that come along with map objects, similar to what you'd see in other languages. String object. So these are, this is a string object and similar to both C# and Python, I guess. Yeah. All right. Searching and replacing, same kind of functions. So by now you should be getting the idea that when you move to a new language, it's just okay. I remember you kind of remember how you did it in one language, and then you just you use the web and figure out what the same thing is. The terminology might be different, but you recognize substring and split and two lowercase, two uppercase, and so on. Trim. And oh yeah, you could do this in JavaScript too. This is kind of gets this kind of gets kind of confusing. Template literals. So you just, anyway, so that's kind of interesting. And then there's a date object, which is helpful. Declare something as a date object. And then there's accepts arguments to set it up with a certain time, a day, bunch of methods go along with it. Getter and setters, like accessors and setters. And so here's a, you should pretty much know how to do it. The math object, it's similar to math class in Python and C#. And so these are a bunch of methods. You recognize these. Oh, look, you can put a bunch of things in there to the power. And so anyway, so next time, here's exception handling. So there's try catch. You recognize try catch, and you can have more than one catch. So so this should all still be kind of review for you, that you probably learn some things because but you should know most of the stuff, and there's probably some fringe things that you maybe have learned by looking at this. And here's some lab activities. You guys have all been doing pretty well on these. If you'd like me to go over one of these in class, just send me an email. But I think that'll pretty much close out JavaScript, basic JavaScript. And then next time, starting next week, we're going to probably start doing some more coding, where we'll actually be coding in our and using our browser. So using JavaScript with HTML and the document object model. And so we use JavaScript to grab things off the form and the screen and put stuff on there and everything. And event-driven program based on events, user events, timers, and so on. So we will, and using JavaScript for form validation. And so this is really interfacing or using JavaScript to manipulate the browser window and to get data off the browser window, and also to send data to the server. And then we're going to start writing some little APIs. Oh, not yet, but APIs are usually at the server. So anyway, but we will be able to access third-party APIs like weather comparison and so on. So anyway, so next week it's going to start getting more fun. But and so this week should pretty much conclude our review of what you should have picked up mostly in the past coming into this class. We're already into the 6th week, which is pretty far, but anyway, that's good. This textbook is, I've gotten a lot of people liking this textbook and the way they have the participation activities, and you can go away and come back and so on. And so I hope it's been a good review for you. Anyway, okay, so it's only 3:06, but I think I will, if you don't mind, I think I will end the class now. And do you have any are there any questions? Okay, so I will.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. I will see you next week. Take care.